The nurse called me into the hallway and said the words that ended my marriage before I even understood what they meant. She said the bone marrow donor registry needed a paternity match to help my son Tyler, and the results showed I was not biologically related to him at all. I stood there holding a paper cup of hospital coffee, staring at her lips moving, and I felt the floor tilt under me like the whole building had shifted 3 inches to the left. Tyler was 7 years old. He had my laugh, my stubborn chin, my habit of chewing the inside of his cheek when he concentrated. I had been in the delivery room. I had cut the cord. For 7 years I had been his father in every single way that mattered, and now a lab report was telling me none of it was real. I did not confront my wife Elaine that night. I sat in the hospital chapel for an hour, running through every year of our marriage like a man searching for a crack he had somehow missed. We met in college. We married young. She always seemed a little too composed during arguments, a little too quick to change the subject when I brought up her old job at Bennett Realty, but I had chalked that up to her being a private person. Now I wondered what else I had chalked up wrong. I drove home that night with the radio off, replaying small moments that suddenly looked different in this new light. The way she used to take calls on the back porch with the door closed. The unexplained weekend trip to Charleston the month before our wedding, the one she said was a work retreat. I remembered asking her about it once, years later, and how quickly she had laughed the question away, telling me I was being paranoid over nothing. I had believed her completely. That was the part that stung the most, not the betrayal itself, but how easily I had trusted a story that was never true. When I finally asked her, she did not cry right away. She just sat down slowly at our kitchen table and said the name Richard Bennett like she was confessing to a crime she had rehearsed confessing for years. Richard was her boss before we got married, a wealthy real estate developer 20 years older than her. She said it happened only once, right before our wedding, during a moment of doubt she never told me about because she was terrified it would destroy everything we had built. She said she convinced herself Tyler was mine because the timing was close enough, and she buried the truth so deep she almost believed it herself. I asked her why she never told me when doubts must have crossed her mind over the years. She said she was scared, and that fear only grows heavier the longer you carry it. I understood fear. I did not understand 7 years of it. Elaine begged me not to leave, saying we could work through it as a family, that Tyler did not need to know anything had ever been in question. Part of me almost agreed, because the thought of Tyler asking why his parents suddenly stopped living together broke something in my chest. But staying meant pretending the last 7 years had not been built on a foundation she chose to hide from me, and I could not unknow what I now knew. I told her I needed space to think, and I packed a bag that same night while she stood in the doorway crying, asking me to please not do this to our family. I moved into my brother's guest room that same week, but I kept showing up for Tyler every single day. Baseball practice, homework, the ridiculous bedtime stories he insisted had to include a dragon named Cheese. My love for that boy did not check a lab report. That part of my heart never once wavered, not for a single second. What did waver was my trust in everything Elaine had ever told me. So while my divorce lawyer handled the separation, I hired a private investigator named Cole to look quietly into Richard Bennett. Richard had died 2 years earlier from a heart condition, leaving behind a real estate portfolio worth almost $9 million. He had no children of his own, no living siblings, and a will that named a specific and unusual condition. Any biological child of his, proven through DNA testing, would inherit his full estate through a trust managed by his old law firm. Cole found the clause buried in probate filings that had gone almost unnoticed because nobody knew Richard had a child at all. I sat in my car outside his office for 20 minutes after he told me, trying to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. I could bury this information and let Elaine keep hiding her secret forever. Or I could use it to make sure Tyler, the boy I still considered my son in every way, actually received what was legally his. That night I called my lawyer, a sharp and patient woman named Priya who had handled 2 other complicated custody cases in our county. She listened to the entire story without interrupting once, then told me something I have never forgotten. She said the law does not care who fathered a child biologically nearly as much as it cares who raised him, who showed up, and who acted in his best interest when it mattered most. She said if I wanted to protect Tyler, both emotionally and financially, I needed to move carefully and let the paperwork speak louder than my anger ever could. I chose Tyler. I submitted a formal claim on his behalf as his legal guardian, using the very DNA results that had shattered my marriage as the proof required by the estate. The law firm handling Richard's trust ran their own confirmation testing, and 6 weeks later I received a letter stating that Tyler was recognized as Richard Bennett's sole biological heir. Elaine found out about the inheritance the same day I did, because the estate required her signature as the boy's mother to release certain guardianship documents. She showed up at my brother's house furious, saying I had gone behind her back, saying I was trying to steal our son's future for myself. I told her the truth as calmly as I could manage. I said I was not trying to steal anything, I was trying to protect the one person in this entire situation who never lied to anyone, which was Tyler himself. I reminded her that she was the one who buried a truth for 7 years that could have secured his future far earlier if she had simply been honest. The divorce proceedings shifted after that. Because Elaine had knowingly concealed Tyler's true paternity for years, my lawyer argued successfully that I should retain primary physical custody, given my consistent role as caregiver and the instability her deception had introduced into the household. The judge agreed without much hesitation. Elaine was granted only supervised weekend visitation, pending a full court-ordered evaluation of the entire family situation. Elaine tried one last move, petitioning the estate directly and arguing that as Tyler's biological mother she should control the trust funds until he turned 18. But Richard's will was airtight. It specified that funds would be managed exclusively by the law firm and released only for the child's benefit, under supervision of whichever parent held primary custody. Since that was now me, her petition was denied within a month. I will not pretend there was no grief in this story, because there absolutely was. I grieved the marriage I thought I had. I grieved the years I spent believing a version of my life that was never entirely true. But grief and gratitude can live in the same house, and I found myself deeply grateful that a routine medical test, meant only to help my sick son, ended up protecting his entire future instead. Tyler recovered fully from his illness after a successful bone marrow match was found through an unrelated donor. He never needed anything from Richard Bennett to survive, but Richard's estate will make sure Tyler graduates college, buys his first home, and never has to worry about money the way most of us do. Every dollar of it sits in a trust that Elaine cannot touch, managed by attorneys who report directly to a court that already knows exactly what she is capable of hiding. People sometimes ask me if I regret staying in Tyler's life after learning he was not biologically mine. I tell them the same thing every time. Biology explained where he came from, but 7 years of bedtime stories, skinned knees, and dragons named Cheese explained who he actually is to me. That part was never up for negotiation, no matter what any DNA test said. Elaine lost her marriage, lost primary custody, and lost any control over a fortune she spent years unknowingly protecting through her own silence. I did not destroy her life. Her secret did that on its own.
All I did was make sure the one person who deserved the truth, and everything that came with it, finally got both. 3071